Welcome to the Ancient Coin Podcast with Aaron Burke, a show about ancient coins from the viewpoint of a seasoned professional with nearly 30 years' experience. Here's Aaron Burke and Mike Nodelman on the Ancient Coin Podcast.
And the sound of the gong once again. That means it's time for the Ancient Coin Podcast with Aaron Burke. He's Aaron Burke.
Yes, I am.
Yes, and I'm Mike Nodelman. A little background on our podcast just to kind of get you started. For those of you keeping track, this is episode number 5. And as yet, I have still not mastered ancient coins, so we will carry on. On a serious note, full disclosure, Aaron is my boss. And when I went to work for Harland J, Burke, I came to the company as a U.S. numismatist, and I have an interest in all things numismatic. Aaron offered to teach me about ancient coins, and from that, we decided to produce this podcast so that anyone who wanted to, could learn along with me from a real life expert. So, on today's Ancient Coin Podcast, we'll look.
Wait. Where's the real life ancient?
Dude, you're it.
Expert. Oh, I'm it?
You're it.
Oh.
So, yeah.
So confusing.
Yeah. So on today's Ancient Coin Podcast, we will look at 2 recent catalog sales, 2 recent e-sales. We'll talk about NGC and ancients, and in particular, a Panticapaeum. And in our Collecting Ancient segment, we'll talk about the zoo coins of Gallienus, as well as another pearl to add to our necklace of wisdom. So let's head over to the auction world. And Aaron, you can tell us what's going on in the world of auctions.
So, basically, we've talked about it before. There's a lot of printed sales, and then there's e-sales. We're going to talk about 2 printed sales to start with. And that's basically the Gerhard Hirsch sale. It is going to be on February 10th. They have 558 lots. It's, from my understanding, it was one collection of a collector, and a lot of Roman gold in here. A lot of late Roman gold as well. I believe a lot of Constantinian material, and some early gold as well. They were passing out catalogs at the New York International, and so I noticed it and thought it was a nice sale, and definitely something worth checking out. Moving on, going to talk about, of course, I have to talk about my company every once in a while, or our company, Mike, and so Harland J Limited has its closing of the 218th buy or bid sale this Thursday, February 10th. We had 480 lots. Our sales are a little bit different than most sales, as we are buy or bid. If you don't know what that means, it means that it's a fixed price list till the last day, and then we take offers below our asking price as long as it is acceptable by us, our consigners, and the world, and then we'll sell it at that price. If it hasn't sold at its full price, and there's no buyer's fees. And so when people come to our sales, they're always confused because they see a lot of coins sold, and that's just because someone paid the full price and eliminated it from the end of the bid process. So there's still a lot of coins left, as well as world coins and antiquities. So that's going to be closing on Thursday.
Yeah, 3 days, 23 hours, and 24 minutes from now.
Oh, wow. Damn.
It's on the site.
Okay, so moving on to e-sales. There are a lot of e-sales out there. And just to make a point as well, there was a auction in France. I'm not going to mention the name because I don't want to get anybody in trouble. But I had never even heard of this company before. There's just so many new companies out there that even I haven't heard of. And so my client wanted me to go after a coin. It was actually a decagram, and I went to the company and asked them, "Do you guarantee?" They said yes. Set up phone bidding, and then the day of the auction, no call. I went to their site, and the coin was removed. And so my guess is it was fake, and it was pulled. But they never called me to tell me it was fake. They never answered my emails afterwards to explain themselves, and so didn't give me a warm, fuzzy feeling. But I'm glad we didn't buy it, and I'm glad,
Is it your thought that they were just embarrassed and possibly new and just really didn't know how to handle it?
No, I think they didn't know, but I think that when they did find out, they were embarrassed, didn't want to say anything.
Sure.
But to just ghost me, I felt like, like a teenage girl waiting for a date.
Well, I mean, from a business standpoint, it's always better to be upfront, even when things go, horribly wrong.
Right.
Right. It's like, just be honest. Say,
Right.
something happened and we're sorry. And this is, be transparent. And it looks like you'll have another chance to do business in the future.
Right. Exactly. And, my client kept asking, did they respond? And I'm like, no, didn't respond. I sent like 3 emails. What can I do? So anyway, so my point is that there are a lot of companies out there with e-sales, and just be careful with whom you're doing business with. And just make sure you do your due diligence, because you might get a great deal, but you may be buying a fake. So, or doing business with somebody where you can't get the coins out of the country because maybe they don't have the rights to sell them. Who knows? Just be careful out there, as they would say on Hill Street Blues.
Let's be careful out there. So yeah, know your dealer, and this is where dealing with an experienced dealer is always going to be a plus, because they're going to have the wherewithal to do these kind of things.
Right, exactly. So we'll talk about 2 e-sales that stuck out to me. One is going to be the CNG sale, which is going to close on February 9th. So I believe that's Wednesday of this week. They have 910 lots. Quite a few coins for everybody. They're doing quite a few e-sales these days, and their sales tend to be very competitive. So be careful that you don't overpay, because there is a lot of competition in their sales. It's great for them, great for their consigners, but just make sure you don't overpay. Don't go chasing coins, because in most e-sales there's always going to be another type of coin like it. So there's no reason to always go chasing. So I think in all of these e-sales, it's good just to throw your bids out. Don't stretch too hard unless it's something you have to have. So
and it appears in this CNG sale that there are a lot of just reasonably priced, $100, $150, $300 coins.
Well, that's what e-sales are for, right? They're supposed to be the lower end of the material that they got from a collection, things that aren't worthy enough to go into a paper catalog. You have to understand, when we run our catalogs, our buyer bid sale catalogs is before it's all said and done, it costs us $25,000 per catalog to produce. That's with labor, printing, mailing, and we don't charge for our catalogs, and a lot of dealers don't charge for their catalogs. So you have to factor that into what you're going to be putting in your catalog, so you don't lose money on a catalog per se. You're not going to put in a bunch of $50 coins, because it's going to cost you more to print.
There's just not enough profit in it. I got it.
Right. But in e-sales, you can do that. So now what I'm finding is there's a lot of e-sales out there. They've literally taken what we would consider junk bowl coins, and a junk bowl coin means that it's a pick bowl that's at a lot of dealers' tables that you can go through for $10 or $20. And I'm finding that a lot of these European companies that have popped up, not always European, but it feels like that way, where there are a lot of them are at, and they're basically putting in junk bowl coins, $10 and $20 coins, and getting auction prices for them, because they realize that they can get more money as a single e-sale than they can in a pick bowl. So you're literally combing through lots of garbage when you're going through some of these e-sales.
Yeah, it would seem that pick bowl, you're not competing against anybody versus these auctions, and so it is going to inflate the price of these. Just seemingly common.
Well, you're paying it, and you're paying a commission on top of it,
right?
So some are charging 20%, some are only charging 10% for e-sales, but a lot of them are still charging 17 to 22%. So you have to factor that in when you're looking at some of these auctions. The last one I want to talk about is Roma. They are having their auction February 24th. They have 1,484 lots. That's a lot of lots. So again, I always find there's a lot of interesting things in Roma. And there's little jewels here and there that you can find. But again, you got to factor in the pound. That's the other thing you always have to factor in with some of these European auctions, is that just not the fact that you're paying the commission, the buyer's premium, but you're also paying an exchange rate. So you have to be careful when you're thinking about those things. As an American, we're going to pay about $1.34, $1.35 per pound. So so essentially you're going in losing 35% just on the exchange rate.
Okay. Yeah. You just have to really kind of adjust it. You have to really think about it in your mind. They are not dollars.
Right. And the same thing's true. Euros, you're going to be paying, I think it's about $1.15. Swiss francs, it's almost 1-to-1, but it's still more 10% in the Swiss franc range. So you just have to factor all that in when you're going overseas and buying coins.
And
Plus,
these
there might be export papers, there's shipping. It adds up after a while.
and these numbers move.
Every
They're constantly bouncing around against each other. So
right.
there are
When
times.
I represent clients in auction, as soon as I get the bill, I lock in a rate with my bank, because even if I'm paying 20 days out, or even I'm paying 10 days out, I want to lock in that rate because I want to be able to charge my clients the proper, the rate that I'm being charged.
Sure.
I don't want to tell them what the rate is on one day, and then when I go to pay the bill, it jumps in the wrong direction, and I end up losing money. So, there's a lot of thought that goes into these types of things especially when you're representing clients, for sure. So, right now there's not a lot going on printed sales wise. A lot of the auctions happen in the spring and in the fall, and then obviously in January when we had the New York International. So people are kind of we just got through major auction season between fall and January, and so a lot of the big auction houses aren't going to start popping up until the spring. So in the meantime, you'll have e-sales and you'll have a couple small catalogs here and there, but there's always something to be found every day.
Yeah, this Roma catalog, I'm kind of thumbing through it, and I've hit all the Athenian owls at the bottom, all the tetradrams.
Yeah. So again, we've talked about it. When you know that the market is saturated in one area of coins, just go to a couple of e-sales, and if you see a gazillion of the same type in a lot of different auction houses, the market's probably going to end up being slightly softer in that area. So it might be an area you want to concentrate on.
That makes a lot of sense.
So, but I have to say that the Athens tetradrams have been getting absorbed in the market, even though it's softened a bit on them. They've held pretty well. And why? Because it's one of the most popular ancient coins in the whole collecting area. I mean, it was the Morgan dollar of its day. What else can I say? So let's move on. I'm going to talk something, again, controversial. Maybe. It's more just information because I didn't know this myself. And so I bought the Panticapaean stator. We've talked about it in previous podcasts. I bought it out of Nomos last year, and there has been some chatter of some of the later Panticapaeans being fake, and so that have been in the market, that have been sold by a lot of different auction houses. And so my client decided that he wanted to have this slabbed because just to give an extra layer of fuzziness, feel good, if he decided to sell it to through Heritage or one of the U.S. Distributors down the road. And so he decided he doesn't normally slab, but he wanted me to slab this. I'm not used to slabbing high-end ancient coins. I crack them out. And so it's not
Sounds like a fun thing to do.
Right. And so we submitted this. And if you go to, I don't know if you're on the second slide, Mike.
I am now.
Okay. So there's the coin slabbed, and they gave it an AU star. And
strike 5 of 5, surface 4 of 5, and fine style.
Yeah. What's the fine style? I'm not sure why they put that on there. And then I had made sure to have them put the XRs Classica. This was it was pre-1970, which I told you how important that is. We wanted to make sure that was on there. I believe they charge us extra for that. I think they should just automatically put that on because that adds value to the slab. I don't think
and adds legitimacy to the coin.
Right. I'm not sure why they charge extra for that. But I was surprised when I got the bill. So the bill was $4,260 from NGC. And, my fault. I didn't necessarily, I've slab coins for clients, but not at this level. And normally it's just a couple $100 or less. And so I didn't really think much of it. But I went to the NGC website afterwards and realized, so for anything over 25,000, they charge $400 plus 2% of fair market value. And then, I was curious, so what the U.S. market was doing, and so I asked some questions of some of our U.S. guys. I asked Mike and our other Mike.
Yes, the other Mike.
And so, and they were both, everybody was kind of appalled about how expensive it was. I submitted it at about 230,000 because that's about what it was with everything in. And for insurance purposes, I had to have it in at that level to protect the client. I dropped it off at the New York International so that I didn't have to send it by armor car because I actually had to have it sent back from NGC armor car back to Chicago because it just was over our insurance value. And but I'm not sure where they get what the fair market value of something like this. In U.S. coins, if you look, I looked at PCGS. They're charging for unlimited value anything over 100,000. They're charging $300 plus 1%. So, NGC is charging anything over 25,000. If I'm reading it right, if I'm wrong, somebody can correct me later. I do make mistakes, but this is what I read off their site.
Oh, you hired me.
Yeah. So it's $400 plus 2%. I looked up currency. Currency, they're charging 1.5%. So it's still more than US, but it's less than ancient. So really, NGC ancient slabs are the most expensive slabbing in the entire market, from what I could see.
I mean, that is
numismatically standing.
That is a stark difference from PCGS US coins to NGC ancients. And maybe we are comparing apples to oranges, but I think that there is some, fair comparison to these. Here's the thing, I think this is the important part, if I'm paying attention, is that when you're slabbing these coins, it is about adding value to them. And in this particular case, having this certified with the lot number from the auction in 1934 does add a considerable amount of value to this coin. However, does it add that much value? Is simply certifying the provenance of it, is that going to be worth, $800 or $4,000?
Well, I think that, they're also the fact that they gave it an AU star, and, that obviously is going to bring, we've showed in time again how people are paying ridiculous prices for starred coins. We've talked about it in other podcasts.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess, maybe that's going to add a lot of value. You got to understand, the Chinese and the Japanese collectors are buying a lot of star coins and they're paying really ridiculous prices for them. And so maybe that does make up the difference. I'm not sure.
Well,
but the fact is the difference between U.S. coins and currency and ancient coins is that ancient coins aren't being guaranteed as authentic.
Right, but here's where
U.S. coins they are.
Here's where I scratch my head on it, though. It's like the actual grade itself should not affect the price of what it costs to have it graded. The value of it should. But I don't think that the grade itself. So to say, well, it's starred, yeah, but that's kind of beside the point.
Well, I think it's the service. So it has nothing to do with the grade at that point. It's just the fact that I put it in at 230,000 and they decided based on whatever market value, because I figured out what's 230 minus, at 2%, it wasn't $4,250.
Right.
So some percentage of some number that they pulled, but I can show you Pantacapans that have sold for $100,000. I can show you Pantacapans that have sold for $260,000, and I can show you Pantacapans that have sold for $75,000. So, I'm not sure. Maybe they're doing an average of all of the different prices that have come up. In U.S. coins, they can just look at gray sheets.
Right, because you have a lot more sales. You don't have anywhere near as many sales with a coin like this. But there and again, it's the same thing.
Right.
You know, does it
So,
really?
yeah. Now here's the thing: is that when I do crack out coins, I keep all of the the NGC tags. Now I'm really going to keep them on high end coins because they can reholder it. I think it's $300 to reholder it. Maybe it's less, but they're not charging that 2% anymore.
Okay.
So, so if I'm going to crack out coins that are over $25,000, I want to make sure to keep the tag because if somebody in the future wants to get it reslabbed, they can just resubmit it with the tag. Now, NGC has the right to change the grade because if the coin was altered, and I get that, but they're not going to be charging that 2%. I don't believe, from what I read off their site.
And as far as what the fair market value of this coin is, I think it's funny because you have an auction result. This coin just sold
Right.
at auction, so
Right.
that's typically where we get a lot of our values. And I understand that you're not going to use this auction as the sole price, but
Maybe they did.
I
I
would
don't know.
weigh it.
I'm not
I would
sure.
weigh it fairly heavily because it's
Right.
so recent.
Right. Well, and then if you go to the invoice, which it's funny because they charge a handling fee of $10. I'm not sure what the handling fee was. You're charging $4,250, and then you add $10 for handling.
Well,
Huh?
yeah.
Is that for the plastic?
No, that was from taking it from room to room.
Oh,
I don't know.
right.
And it's like
Yeah, because then
you're
I had to
already
have
charging $4,000 for the service.
right. And so I felt bad. I told my client, and my client said, he said, well, I guess I'll have to think twice about slabbing a high-end ancient again next time. And I felt bad because I didn't know and I should have known. And now I know. And that's why I'm also bringing it up here because I think other people should know too, just so they have an idea. Um, uh, and NGC didn't do anything wrong. They're right there in the rules. So I just didn't know about it. I was just surprised at the price. And then, I, I don't know. It just it left a bad taste in my client's mouth. And so I told my client, I said, you know what, I'm going to split the cost with you of the fees because I felt bad. And he says, you don't have to do that. And I said, yes, I do, because I felt like I had to share in in this particular situation because I'm representing him, and so that means whether I represent him in buying coins or selling coins or slabbing coins, I should take some of the pain and suffering that comes along with that. That's just the right thing to do.
Well, it's good for you to take a fiduciary attitude towards it. I think that's really what you're doing is you're truly taking your client's best interests as your best interests, and that's
Right. And then the same client, he actually bought a Queen Elizabeth coin that was graded by NGC that actually broke the record for the most expensive Queen Elizabeth coin ever to sell. It, I think, was something like $650,000. And he said, I think we got it from Spink. He said, did Spink pay that fee? How do they figure that out? And I said, well, obviously, they probably worked out a deal with NGC. It's also a world coin, so it's probably a little bit different than ancients. And also maybe the auction houses, when they're submitting an important collection, they get favorable fees. Plus, it wasn't 650,000; it was like only estimated at like 50,000 or something like that when the estimates happened. So again, do you then have to play games? You have to send things in at a cheaper value. You can't be honest with NGC. I'm not sure where to go with that.
it should be a much more transparent process.
I think so. So anyway, I hate harping at NGC. It's funny because when I was at the table in New York submitting this coin, a European dealer walked up to me and he said, I thought you hated NGC. Why are you here? And I said, I don't hate NGC. I just, don't necessarily believe in how they're sometimes being used how they're being used and sold. So, it's not that I hate them. In fact, I just submitted coins for their bulk service because I had a bunch of Pontius Pilate coins and I can sell them to some of the US dealers. And I'm not going to gouge them, but it's easier for them to sell because it's a nice box at that point.
Sure.
Because they're going to sell it to people that are non-coin people. So I don't have a problem submitting them, but I'm not submitting, normally high end stuff and then hoping for a star and then adding, a huge percentage, which now I understand. Like if I paid $5,000 extra to have it slab, I'm going to add a ton more onto the coin when I go to sell it, because now that raised the value. Maybe that's the point. Are they raising the value of the market,
Well,
by doing that?
I mean, seemingly they are, because if they are then making it available for sale going forward, which they're doing with that provenance.
Well, the provenance was always there. Pedigree was always there, but it's just, yeah, I don't know. I'm not sure where to go with that, but
Well, look,
you can look at it in a lot of different ways.
taking them out to the woodshed every once in a while is never a bad idea. And honestly, it's a good way to get the discussion going and get it out there.
Right.
Sure.
Right. Exactly. And just letting people know, how, like I didn't know. I should have known. That's what I told my client. I should have known, but I didn't. So, you know, that's made me want to pay for half of it.
Well, that makes you a really good guy. Plus, that probably look.
I don't know if it makes me a good guy, but it's just good. It's just
well,
good
it's
sense,
okay. Good. It makes you a good business person, because you realize that that's a cost that you're going to recoup. It's got to come back to you.
Yeah. Well, when I build a collection with somebody, especially of that stature, I fully am aware of what we're doing together, and I really treat their collection as it's my own.
Yeah, I mean, the guy just spent $200,000 on a coin, so.
Right. And it also, I mean, when I represent clients, it helps me in the market, because people then think, oh, he's got a good client, then I get offered coins. There's all kinds of good residuals that come from it. I protect my client from, from auction houses reaching out to him to sell his coins because they don't know he owns them, because I create a buffer. And so that's really what I am, for a lot of these high end guys and even mid range guys, is that I'm a buffer for them. Everything ends with me, as far as the ownership goes. And so it does protect them down the road.
You know what, though? That is not necessarily the way the business is done anymore. And I think it's a very honorable way of doing things, but it's just not the way that things are done anymore. So
well, I think there's a lot of, I mean, at least at Harland Burke, we try to do it that
well,
way.
it should be. You and I both have that same philosophy. That's the way that you should be doing it. But that's unfortunately
Mike Prince is the same way. Mike bends over backwards for his clients.
Absolutely.
He's our high-end U.S. Dealer at Harland Burke. And you build long relationships with people. That's what you do.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the worst part is that when you build this collection with somebody and then you find out like 2 months later they gave it to your competitor to sell, and you're like, I just, it feels like it's my collection, and you're not even giving me the opportunity to try to help you sell it. Or if you're going to go to an auction house, let me go in and negotiate the terms for you. Because again, I'm going to work for your best interest. And
sure, and the collection, you put it together. I mean, that's
right.
Yeah,
right. And so it does hurt when you hear that your client gave it to somebody else to sell. So you take it somewhat personally, but at the end of the day, it's people can do whatever they want with the stuff. It's theirs.
Yes, it is. And hopefully, it doesn't happen very often.
No. So let's move forward into the education section. We've heard a lot of people talk about coins that are unattainable, and so I want to start to try to focus, depending on the flow of this podcast and what's going on in the industry, specific areas that people can collect. And so I found I've always enjoyed the coins of Gallienus. That's also can be our wordplay, Mike.
Yes, Gallienus.
So Gallienus, actually, interesting guy. He it was a very volatile period. A lot of people getting killed by troops and not lasting so long. Gallienus's father was Valerian, and he reigned with his father between 253 and 260 together. And then his father was killed by one of the Sasanian kings, Shapir, I believe his name was. And then Gallienus took over as sole emperor between 260 and 268 AD. And we learned in the first podcast when we did Antoniniani that was the beginning of the debasing of silver coins, and that was done by Caracalla in 215 AD. And so here, Gallienus did a whole series of zoo coins, is what they're kind of typically known as, where he has all kinds of different animals on the reverses of the coins. And there's a really interesting work that is done by a gentleman named Jim Phelps. And Mike will bring that up if he hasn't already.
I have.
Okay. And so, unfortunately, Jim Phelps died in 2013 at the age of 45. So just a little bit of a tribute to him. If any of you haven't been to Forum Ancient Coins, it's a very good site to go to. They have a very nice forum of collectors discussing things. They also have a fake ancient counterfeit section, which a lot of us dealers sometimes will go to check to see specific dies that have been condemned. We'll go into that at some point, talking about fakes in another podcast. But this is an excellent place to go. So anyway, Jim did an excellent job talking about the coins of Gallienus. And if you scroll down, you'll see a couple of tables. In the first table, it's believed, and this is obviously all these coins have representations of meaning. And so in this case, all of the different animals are representations of different deities, gods. And so sometimes they're sharing them. This also happened in the Egyptian culture as well. So if you go back to the Egyptian culture, you would have a lot of gods. There were so many gods. They were represented by several animals generally. And so same happened in the Roman period as well as the Greek period. So it's going to continue on. And so, but I always find it interesting, Mike, to see ancient cultures that have come and gone and the practices, and some of them just continued on, but just in a different variation. So it's fun when you see that.
Sure. I look at some of these, some of the things on the chart. So Mercury is a hippocamp, and it's the hippocampus it immediately triggers that word in my head, which is a part of the brain. So I'm really not sure what that is.
We'll show it to you soon. But
okay.
Basically, it's basically like a seahorse.
Okay.
It's like half dragon, half horse.
Hercules is a lion. That makes sense. Jupiter, a goat. So, I mean, kind of cool stuff.
Yeah, what's interesting about Hercules is that the representations for Hercules are generally his club and the lion. The lion from the first labor when he killed the Nemean lion, and then wore his lion scalp for the rest of the labors of Hercules, the 12 labors. And so, there's certain gods that will always have certain representation based on what they wore or what they carried. And so that follows on some of the symbols on coinage as well. And then below, go ahead, sorry.
No, I was just going to say, just for the record, Jupiter is not the greatest of all time. He's a goat. It's different. It's the Billy Goat type. Yeah. Dad joke.
All right, I have to. So below that, there's the different officinas. Now, officinas are basically mint marks that were used by the mints. And they can represent a lot of different things internally. And so he actually went through and he lists all the different officina types, these letters that would be listed on the coins, and some of the meanings behind them as well. He based, if you look there, you'll see under Diana, you'll see 1190 and the percentages. This is based on one hoard that was found in England in 1983, I believe, and it was 54,951 coins of Gallienus. It's called I'm probably murdering the name. It's Cunetio hoard, Cunetio.
Well, better you than me.
Yeah, exactly. So, I'm sorry. It was found in 1978 in Wiltshire. So a hoard can be 5 coins. It could be 500,000 coins. In this case, it was 54,951. And so based on large hoards like this, we then can decide what was mainly being minted in what coins are found in that hoard and the percentages of how many were minted of each type. And it's a good sampling of when you get a large hoard like this of what was rare than other coins. So in this case, obviously the coins of Guyana were not were not very rare because 43% of the 54,000 coins were Guyana reverses.
Yeah, they were
So
the
that was
absolutely
obviously
most common coin found.
right, right. Where you look at Hercules, there was only 4 coins, so it's only 15% of the hoard. So it's Curtis in on Severin coinage in our Curtis Clay in our offices. He uses the Rekna hoard, which was found in Bulgaria, Sofia in 1900, and there was 100,000 coins in that hoard. And so he will actually catalog it based on the rarity of the coin based on that hoard, because then it is good sampling of actually what was being produced at the time.
And Jim Phelps did just an absolutely stellar job of writing this up. I mean, there's detail in here that is just really cool.
It's good.
Describing
It's
the
good. You're right.
entire zoo series.
So now, if you go to the Coin Talk, and if you haven't been to Coin Talk, again, great forum to join, to learn from other collectors, and there's dealers on here as well. They did a whole section on zoo coins of Gallienus where people were showing off their coins. And if you scroll through, you can see all the different animal types that are being shown by all the different collectors. A lot of these coins, most of them are under $75. So you can buy a coin, an animal coin of Gallienus for as cheap as $30. You probably find them in junk bowls for $10. Again, it's going to come down to quality, rarity, centering, silvering, and strike. And so the Antoniani is generally a lower grade coin in general. And so you won't get a lot of high grade coins often, but they do come up. And so this is a great collection for kids. It's a great collection for somebody who doesn't have a lot of money, who wants to collect. Obviously there's going to be some of the types that are going to be expensive that are rare, but in general, you can get a nice little grouping of animal coins from Gallienus for not a lot of money.
This is a very nice entry level thing to do.
Yeah, and it's fun. You have lions and hippocamps and
Bears.
and
Oh my.
bears. Oh my, griffins and centaurs and
does and
does and all kinds of fun,
all kinds of stuff.
Cool.
So
Pegasus. So even the gods are some form of an animal. So which is cool. So
and a lot of these have mint marks, which are or signatures.
The control
I'm not
marks.
sure which the control marks. Okay, so it's like your pies and your gammas and that.
Right. Exactly. So again, if you go back to I'm looking at one that has a hippocamp and it has an H underneath, and if you go over, you can see that they call it a cry camp. I don't know. But anyway, so you can match up some of these mint marks to the different gods as well, and the coins and the control marks are being done at the time. So again, great area to collect and not expensive. And there are tons of little, segments of ancient numismatics that you can collect that are fun and not expensive. And you can get a lot of enjoyment from it.
And that, I think, is one of the best messages that we can bring you, is that, look, this hobby not only has the very high end, it also has, just an average place for average collectors and people of lower means. There's stuff there for people to collect. And,
Right.
Some of this stuff can be really interesting, can be I don't know. It seems to me that something that is this old and is this collectible should probably be a little bit more, it should cost you a little bit more, and it seems like it doesn't.
Well, and my pearl of wisdom is going to be, you don't have to spend big money to successfully collect.
And there you go. See, there's for our necklace, we have another pearl. It's really important that you understand that, this hobby, although there's a lot of attention paid to high-end collections, it's not all about that. It's about
Right.
collecting. It's about having fun. It's about learning. For me, I think, this exposure for me has been interesting in the fact that I'm starting to really learn the commonalities of everything. So one of the things that I've been going back and doing on my own is looking more at history, and the history of the Roman Empire, the history of the Greek Empire, and the history of the Byzantines. And that is really making some of this make a lot more sense.
Yeah, and when you know, I just touched on some of the history of Gallienus, but if you get down and you start reading about Gallienus and what was going on at the time period and the wars that were going on, it really does bring the coins to life. And Gallienus had to deal with a lot. It was something like he had to deal with like 8 or 9 rebellions. He had wars coming from different sides of the empire towards him. He had all kinds of stuff going on during that time period. And so it's interesting that they do that and then still think of how they want to, what coins they want to mint.
Now, one of the things that I noticed was really interesting is the fact that Gallienus, he ruled with his father. Was that really common?
Yes, because, a lot of emperors wanted to bring their children into the fold and have them take over. And then generally they're also probably setting them up for their death sentence, unfortunately, which is generally the case. But that it was pretty normal for that to happen, for sure.
Okay.
For sure. I would say one of the more successful ones was probably Septimius Severus, and he brought both of his sons in, Caracalla and Elagabalus. So, Caracalla wasn't the best emperor. He wasn't kindly he was pretty ruthless, but he did bring in what they call the Severan period, because it started with Septimius Severus for the most part. So again, bringing descendants in, makes a big difference for their longevity of the family line.
Okay.
So sometimes they'll bring him in as Augustus, and then they make him Caesar later. It's kind of like vice president, president type of situation.
Sure.
Sometimes I'll give them land in one part of the kingdom to rule, and then when one dies, they replace them.
Well, believe it or not, a lot of that stuff still happens today. If you look at the English royal family, it happens exactly the same way. The Prince of Wales is still the Duke of Cornwall, and it's all these duchies and things like that that give them money. And I told you I've been studying.
Exactly.
It's yes,
Mike, you're doing such a great job. I'm so proud of you.
Oh, sure. Look, I still here. See if you like that.
Oh, I love it.
Yeah. That's the work of a friend of ours, and they are available. I will make the address available to people. They have he has all kinds of ancient.
Yeah, you showed it to me. It's very cool.
It's cool. It's got the other side. It's got the reverse on the backside too. So we've got a thing on that side.
That kind of looks like that might be a star 2 or 3.
I think it's fine style. All right, so let's see. We've learned, we've looked, and we have discussed. Is there anything else you have to add for us today?
I don't. I think we've conquered it as much as we can on this wonderful night.
Now I have to apologize for the really just all over the place kind of graphics at the beginning of the show. I'm really not an engineer. I'm learning this, and it's getting better. I think somewhere around 4 or 5 minutes into it, it got a whole lot better. But we're learning. We're getting better at it.
Yeah, and if you guys don't know, I can't see Mike's screen, so I can't tell if he's messing up.
No, he has absolutely no idea how badly I'm messing this up. But he'll find out.
It's only afterwards when I watch the podcast myself.
Yes.
So
yeah, and then I get that little text message.
It's we're look, and I make mistakes too. None of us are perfect. A lot of this stuff is just off the top of the head and stuff that I've learned, and sometimes I have to go back and look at study things, and but in general, this is about as authentic as it gets.
Yes, you are definitely getting us in our own skin. Whatever you get, warts and all, you're getting all of it. So,
right.
But I think that this has been really cool, and until I master ancient coins, we'll have to continue doing it.
Sounds like a plan.
Okay. So we'd like to thank everybody for listening and send you over to our website at, you can get there with ancientcoinpodcast.com, or you can just go to Harland J. Burke's website at hjbltd.com. There you can find all the episodes from all 5 of them that we've done so far. And you can give us suggestions. You can write us, send us your questions and comments and criticisms. We'd love to hear it.
Don't be mean.
Well, whatever. I have a delete button.
So do I.
Yeah, exactly. So, for the Ancient Coin Podcast, thanks for listening, and we'll talk to you next time.
See you later.
Thanks for listening to the Ancient Coin Podcast with Aaron Burke. We'll return with another episode soon. Meantime, you can join our private group on Facebook. Just go to facebook.com and search the Groups tab for Ancient Coin Podcast Discussion Group and ask to join. There you can become part of our community, where we share and discuss ancient coins, as well as the show, the ancient coin market, auctions, or just to give our own opinions on things in order to learn together. Join Aaron and Mike again soon for the next episode of the Ancient Coin Podcast with Aaron Burke.